Good morning, students. As we are entering the day 5th of the BIIS-11 workshop, today with us we have Dr. Taslim Arif Syed, CEO and Director of CCAM, Bangalore. His initial training has been in the neurosciences, where he received his PhD from Max Planck Institute for Brain Research, Germany, from 2002 to 2006, and followed it by postdoctoral training at the University of California, San Francisco from 2006 to 2009. At the same time, he also underwent training in management for biotech and innovation from QB3 at UC Santa Cruz, UC Berkeley, and UC San Francisco from 2007 to 2009. He has also completed a biotech management program for biotech executives at Wharton School of Management in the year of 2012. In the Bay Area, he served as a management consultant with the QB3 New Biotech Venture Consulting, and in an individual capacity, he also consulted for many biotech firms in the US. Dr. Taslim Arif Syed is an adjunct faculty at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Madras, and also Amrita Institute School of Biotechnology since 2015. He also heads the Discovery to Innovation Accelerator program at CCAM Bangalore. He is actively involved in promoting innovation in life science and healthcare by supporting translation of discoveries to application, entrepreneurship, and technology development. With this short introduction, I invite Dr. Taslim Arif to deliver his talk. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much, Doctor. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to come on this, event again. Something that has been a very exciting initiative called Sitare, and it's my privilege to associate with it and contribute while I am based out of Bangalore, but connect with you all and share some thoughts. Today, I'll share some thoughts with all of you from some of the work that we have done at CCAM. I'll keep it short. I may have to jump out a little bit for something that has come up, but I'll keep it short for half an hour. And then if there are any questions, we can take it for 10-15 minutes. With that, may I start from my side? Share the screen. Yeah, can you see the screen? I just want to check quickly.
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So just very quickly, just to give you a perspective for today's discussion, which is more about, startup ecosystem for sustainable development. Before I go on to share with you all very detailed perspective, I just wanted to say that for all of us who are connected with science, taking science forward, doing scientific application is something that excites all of us who are trained in science, scientists, and so on. It is very, very exciting way of looking at how science can be useful to the society. And you all who are associated with science would immediately connect how crucial biological science research and applications were there for last 2 years. I don't need to repeat that. Just to give you a perspective, entire COVID cycle, everything you looked at was connected with science, biomedical research, starting from diagnostics to treatment to biomedical devices used in hospitals, at home, and even the vaccines, which all based on scientific work. And all of them had one vehicle. What was the vehicle that they take to do that forward? Enterprises, companies, startups. These were the vehicles where science went forward and got delivered to the society around us. So today, I just wanted to tell you about what is happening around how science is being taken forward through these vehicles, which we call it as a startups, biotechs, and so on, and how the startups and others can be supported, and how your exciting ideas could be supported through various ecosystems like what one would call it as CCAM, which also supports significantly, and there are many other ecosystems in India, which are there. So I'll give you a perspective from CCAM today. So CCAM is a part of larger Bangalore Life Science Cluster, and it is actually very blessed to be in this very rich scientific environment, and something that we leverage the scientific capabilities of this campus, which also has National Center of Biological Sciences, one of the premium most biological science research institutes of India, INSTEM, which is only federally funded stem cell research and regenerative medicine institute, and CCAM, which is a technology and innovation engine as we go forward. Together, we are around 1,600 to 1,800 people on campus with capability to do fundamental research, translation, innovation, and so on. There are broadly two verticals at CCAM. One is the technology platforms, where researchers, academia, industry, startups can leverage scientific tools and platforms which are available, and then take their science, R&D, research and development further. So that is one aspect of it. The second one here is where you are given the other non-technical support in terms of infrastructure for incubation, funding, mentoring, connect to the industry, the very good environment which can nurture bio-entrepreneurs. And in terms of technology platforms, which researchers from academia, industry, startups may need, is flow cytometry, high throughput screening, genomics, microscopy, mass spectrometry, structural biology, transgenic animals, micro devices, really, state-of-the-art technology platforms available on campus and accessible via CCAM. And we have done several very high amount of work with several institutes and research organizations and industry across India. And as you can see, the footprint of that here. This is where researchers can directly connect with these technology platforms, get access to it, and take the science forward rather than worrying about buying those high-end capable instruments, converting those into running facilities, having experts to run those, maintaining those. You can actually access them from far in a setup which is supported by government, and one can take it forward. So this is something that researchers and young researchers and entrepreneurs, or future entrepreneurs who are sitting here, and current researchers who are sitting here should take a note on and reach out to us for anything that you have in any of these technology platforms which are there. Any need you may have, we can kind of take care of it. So that is one simpler version of it. If I shift the gear and jump towards larger entrepreneurship supporting effort, we have the capability to support from funding to incubate to mentor and accelerate. And this is just a few things, but very importantly, we have now a very solid wherewithal to identify good idea, support them with funding. We have possibly 15 programs to support, 10 to 15 programs to support with funding ability, incubate them in a plug-and-play manner, handhold them and mentor. One of the most important thing in this is to support and handhold the startups and then accelerate them. This is something that is available in various ecosystems, and each one of them have their niche way of doing it, different way of doing it. You should figure out where would you get the most capable and more aligned support that you need. So you have to find out where can I get the funding capabilities, incubation, mentorship, etc. You can actually reach out to many other ecosystem players which are there. And this has resulted at CCAP at many very exciting innovations, as one can talk about here, from companies which are working in infectious biology, like Bugworks, to companies which are working in cell therapy, like Pendurum. Bugworks is working infectious biology for antimicrobial resistance. Pendurum is working for cell therapy from a perspective of building mini liver, which is using the hepatocides and then taking it further to the next level from a perspective of even building suturable cornea for vision disorders which are had. At the same time, there are companies like C6 Energy, which is working using ocean farming, using red algae to build products which are there for agricultural growth promotion, or possibly in future as feeds for non-human feeds, or even futuristically biodegradable products, which can allow many sustainable solutions for consumptions across us. At the same time, there are several other companies which are working in breakthrough innovations like Koyo Labs, which is working in infectious biology towards solving one of the most fatal condition in ICU setting called ventilator associated pneumonia. But friends, what I wanted to rather say is that these are different innovations which get nurtured through ecosystems like ours in different way, but they can have different flavors of themselves. So they can be in antimicrobial resistance, they can be in molecular biology, they could be in regenerative medicine, oncology, medical devices, non-communicable diseases, maternal child health, infectious disease, several of those. How it helps is that it is an ecosystem which looks at each of this innovation as separate and support them separately. It is not just funding. It is not just providing incubation, but it is more of supporting each one of them based on what they are capable of, what they need support from, and make it. So ecosystem needs to look at each one of this separately. It cannot just see this as a one cohort and you support it, and you have to engage with each one of them separately in some manner so that you can help them, because every of this innovation may have a different story, different status, different technology, different people, different challenges, different market, completely different. So many factors could be different from each one of them. They are unique in nature, and hence ecosystems need to support those. And government, as one of the main ecosystem players, is supporting those heavily. Then you have organizations like CCAM. Then there are other players from corporate and all which are part of it. Similarly, you can have in agriculture, nutraceutical, waste management, industrial biotechnology, and veterinary sciences. You can see the diversity, friends. What you are seeing is a diversity of kind of work that is happening and how it can happen through, support, a comprehensive support that one could get. Now, coming to what you would saw is that some of these specific areas which are working at a level like maternal child health. There are many areas which are now being supported by different groups, and some of these are maternal child health, fetal monitoring of device for preventing stillbirths, diagnostic platform for neonatal sepsis, device for neonatal respiratory support, therapy for neonatal hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, diagnostic platform for maternal preeclampsia, therapy for symptomatic uterine fibroids. These are very important societal problems in one area, that is maternal child health. And we need to ensure that while we go to the cutting edge of growth as a nation, as an economy, it is very important that the growth happens across, and growth and development happens across the population and not only for part of the population. And for that to happen, you have to provide specific support, key factors being education, good healthcare to all the entire population. And from science, we could contribute immediately through the innovations which can provide support to all of them, the people who are coming from the lower economic strata or people who are coming from middle and lower economic strata. They need new innovations because the current innovations are only possibly, some of the our current innovations are only possibly available to the high economic area, to the best of the hospitals, and not available in government places, rural healthcare capabilities and all. And innovations have the capability to break this barrier in many areas, to build development which is inclusive, which is overall, and something that we can all do. And there is market. There is market at large, as we know that India economic strata is like a pyramid, and bottom of the pyramid is the most broader one, and hence that is a broader market. So building innovations for them also has a huge market, and people are realizing it more and more. So many of this actually could serve as a good healthcare support towards inclusive development, inclusive growth of a nation that we all hope for. And this is something very, very. So we'll have to identify areas where we are not doing good as a nation in healthcare and build innovations for those. And this maternal child health is one area we haven't done very well. Our maternal and neonatal mortalities are not very something that we could be proud of. The numbers are not very good, and many states are really not doing well at all. And something innovations, if this could possibly make a contribution to, do better for all, allow us to do better in these parameters. I think that is a great contribution in terms of holistic, broad development angle that we can actually look at for all of us. Similar challenge is with agriculture. Again, this agriculture is not a single lens sector. It has so many perspectives, so many angles, and again, agriculture happens across. And many of these agricultural problems are many farmers, large farmers, or rather, I would say large number of farmers are actually holding small land, or are labor farmers, farm laborers and all. And again, here we haven't done well. We haven't built many things to actually provide them to support it to the next level. And this is exactly what we need to do in terms of creating a manner where we can kind of build innovations, create solutions which they can be proud of and build it, like ocean farming for seaweed, C6, developing plant growth stimulator. This has actually resulted in 50% increase for many crop productions. The second is what one would call it as preventing fatal chronic pesticide exposure to farmers. Very important aspect, very, very important aspect. And how some of the farmers who get chronic pesticide exposures long term, and their health issues which get impacted by that. How you can prevent that. And Sapio Health has built a nice preventative gel so that the exposures, even after exposure, the toxicity is not built in for farmers. Same thing is, excuse me, same thing is true with novel antimicrobials for plant pathogens. We all know that antimicrobials are many times chemical solutions, and and they excuse me, I'll just get some water, excuse me. Sorry, I'm back. So I was saying that even addressing that allows us to, build it. Because of many plant pathogens, chemicals are used as antimicrobials, which is adding to the health issues for both growers as well as the consumers, people who consume it, finally, those agricultural, produce. Many other components are also there in terms of using agri-tech work for, measuring the soil moisture or technologies for micropropagation of economical important plants. And the other aspect is largely what we have seen is the broad aspects of antimicrobial resistance, which I'll not go into it, but very important thing as a as a holistic issue, which is going to be which is right now a silent pandemic, almost killing 1.2 million people as of today, and projected to kill nearly 10 million people in 20 odd years. 10 million people is a very large number to be, to be affected and lost if we lose them just for AMR, and something needs to be done for that. So a place like CCAM, which attempts to be an ecosystem enabler, this is where some of the work happens, and this is something that we are trying to do, where we have funded our own nearly 300 odd startups. We are working with 400 institutions. Many of these startups have received funding, and much other work has happened. At the same time, we have done a lot of work for COVID by building platforms for building capacity for COVID-19 diagnostics, which was much required over the last 2 years, and also building innovations where we could take innovations in diagnostics, assisted respiratory devices, pre-screening, vital parameter monitoring, air surface analyzer, therapeutics, preventatives, drug screening platform, wastewater decontamination, and cold chain transport. All of these innovations we were able to help and support it. Some of them are deployed in hospital. So as of today, some of CCAM supported innovations are in 17 states, serving people as we speak, and something that we are very keen to take it forward. Similarly, we have some of the work in AMR Innovation Hub. But what I wanted to say largely was that this all requires building innovations and stakeholders and ecosystems, and a inclusive and sustainable development require a common cause of doing it together, a clear mission and an objective. At the same time, we need to have an inclusive and efficient lead who can take it forward. And many times, places like led at Sitare and other places actually make sense to build those innovations, support, be an ecosystem enabler like you have been, and take those innovations for sustainable development. And also, very importantly, to create the right environment to work together and respond, and ability to respond to dynamic circumstances around us. I believe that these are very crucial components as an ecosystem player, and for a larger goal that we may have for inclusive, sustainable development. I think would be very, very key. It could come from technical side of sustainability. It could come from economic side of sustainability. It could come from a societal or population side of sustainability, inclusiveness as one. But these all require a cause, a clear mission objective, an inclusive and efficient lead, and the right environment to work together. And I think currently the environment because of innovations that we are working together in India for entrepreneurship. As we come together, there are many players like CCAM who can help you, who can take your ideas forward, who can give you an anchor to anchor you somewhere and then take it from there. So I think I wish you all the very best for people who are in this field of building innovations, for people who are trying to take innovations to society, and we'll be very happy to support them. Again, please feel free to write to us, reach out to us at our website, that is ccam.res.in, or email at tasleem@ccam.res.in. You could also follow all our efforts at our social media handle on Twitter, that is ccam_Bangalore or Tasleem. Thank you so much for your time. I know I'm possibly not doing that well, just a little bit on the weather, but I hope we have been able to give you some view that we can expand on and do interact more. I'm available for detailed interaction now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doctor. Students, if you have any questions, you can ask Dr. Tasleem. Any questions?
So I think Mahi Rathore from Lucknow has said that what points should we pay attention to in our startup idea so that more people agree? It's a very interesting question, very good question. The reason that you want people to agree is not because they need to agree. The reason people to agree to make sure that you are on the right path. The reason that you possibly should make sure that you show them that you are trying to solve a problem that exists right now. So a very good understanding of problem is one of the most important things you should consider when you are having a startup idea. That is one. Second most important thing is to say that I have a thought process, I have a hypothesis which works, it can solve this problem. That is another important thing. And the third thing, after problem and potential solution, third, you have to say that you and your team, your colleagues, have the capability to take that idea all the way. So you have the abilities to actually do that. Otherwise, I can right now talk about space science, but I don't know anything about space science. And why would anybody give me money for space? Anybody support me because I don't have expertise. Similarly, I think it is very important to also show that I have people, me, my colleagues, who can do that work, who are experts in doing that work. Problem statement, possible solution, team are the three important things that you should keep in mind as you go forward. So to keep, not just agree, but convince them that you are on the right path so they can support you back. So I would say that. I hope I answered your question. Okay. Can I go to the next question, Doctor?
Yes, Doctor. Second question is there.
Yeah. So please, can you tell that what is the first step after complete? So, so let's say you built a product. You can say product. We sometimes when we build in the lab, we call it a product, but sometimes it's not a product. It is something that people call it as a prototype. So if you say the product has to be prototype to be created, you have to test the prototype, you have to take and validate the prototype further, you have to get approval for the prototype, regulatory clearance if required, so all that process. you have to do after your prototype is ready. Ensure that the scale-up capabilities are there, any approval required, any testing required, be it functional testing, be it clinical testing, clinical validation, clinical study, all that has to happen before you hit the market. So one is to build a prototype, and second is to then validate prototype at the scale-up level, at the clinical level, getting the regulatory approval. These are the processes that you need to do after the prototype making. So I hope that answered your question. The next question is from Rashi Verma. Can you tell how can I commercialize the product in market? Okay. So in a way, simple answer for that is that every product has a different commercialization strategy. Some products are very easy to sell because it either it doesn't require regulatory approval, it is a small, you can do it yourself. Some products may have complexity because it is only sold through or used by hospitals. Sometimes it's patients, sometimes it's not even in healthcare, sometimes it is a normal person, so nutrition. It depends product to product. So you'll have to understand the market, right? Sometimes it's just a cream, which can be over the counter. And so you have to all think about which product you are thinking about. What is the distribution channel? What is the sales channel? How is it getting sold? How the final beneficiary, what is the chain that it comes through? And then you have to become a part of that chain. You have to figure out whether you would do it directly, the sale, or you will provide to somebody who has the distribution channel. There are many ways of commercializing the product, and that's how it is. It should be ready and it should be taken forward that way. So I hope so it is a product by product. You will have to understand the value chain. You have to understand the distribution channel, sales channel. In different markets also, it is different, not only same for all markets, geographical markets, and also you'll have to understand that and then build a strategy for commercialization or sale, if that is it is. I hope I answered your question, Mr. Rashi. Okay.
Any more questions?
If not, I wish all participants all the very best for your scientific journey, your participation through Sitare. I am sure that these exposures will go a long way. While we were studying, we didn't have this exposure. So you are the lucky ones. So I hope you can continue to do well, be bold, do what you want in terms of your career, follow what you enjoy, because that's where the success is. So I wish you all the very best. And there is somebody who has a question, so I'll answer it before I sign off. Sneha Vaishi asks, what is the difference between a startup and a business? Very simple. Startup, so something that you just begin as a business, is a startup. The early phase of a business, one could call it as a startup. There's nothing else. So when you begin a business of any kind, doesn't need to be, even if I may say so, even if you are just selling something very, very small and you register a company, it could be called a startup. And then it grows to be a medium-sized company, mid-sized company, where people call medium and small enterprises, as they call it. And then you become large company, and then you become a corporate, and so on. So it is a stage, early phase of a business as a company is called a startup. I hope that helps you from that perspective. So with that, Doctor, I take your permission to
Thank you.
kick
Thank
off.
you so much, Doctor, for joining us today.
No,
Thank you
a
so much.
pleasure and all the very best to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Students, please stay with us. Next lecture begins by 11 a.m. Okay. Professor Promil Tiwari from Naipar Mohali is joining us. So please be with us. Thank you. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, Professor Tiwari.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Professor.
Just one sec. I was trying to mute down all devices around, and I guess you can see me as well. There is some flickering in my screen. I do not know. Anyway, so I'm audible and right.
Okay. Students, yes, we will continue with our second session for the day. We have with us Professor Pramil Tiwari, an alumnus of Banaras Hindu University, heads the Department of Pharmacy Practice at the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Naipur Mohali. With 30 years of experience in academia, he has crafted effective networks with the practitioners at multiple hospitals for the professional training of students. Professor Tiwari has mentored over 150 M.Pharm students and doctoral students. His research group has published more than 200 abstract presentations in various national and international scientific meetings, multiple pharmacy-centric publications, and many book chapters. His research interests are spread over drug utilization studies, with special emphasis on antimicrobial usage in hospitals, pharmacoeconomics, pharmacovigilance, pharmacotherapy in vulnerable patients, use of vaccines, and promotional rational use of drugs. His research group is also actively investigating chronic illness in hepatic and nephrology patients. He is a member of core committee for the revision of national formulary since 2009. A life member of 8 professional bodies. Professor Tiwari is also honorary joint secretary of the Indian chapter of ISPOR at Naipur Mohali. He is a faculty advisor of the student chapter of ISPOR. Professor Tiwari has the exposure of working in cross-cultural settings within the country and abroad. In addition to English and Hindi, he speaks, understands Gujarati, Punjabi, and Arabic. So with this short introduction, I invite Professor Tiwari to deliver his talk. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. By no means, it was a short introduction, and I was realizing that, yeah, when you grow up. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the organizing team, and everyone on this call today. It's a matter of honor again to be speaking a second time in a short time. And as already introduced, thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Thank you for joining us in a short notice.
No, it's perfectly okay. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, young researchers, everyone on the call, I would only say at this point of time, I do not try to get into the book every time I come across a problem. I try to use the knowledge, the skills that I have gathered over the years to find out a solution. And I think life is about finding solutions. It could be a research problem, but most of the time it could be a real problem on your face. So with that little one line as a takeaway, I will take next 30 to 35 minutes. I'm told that you in the audience have a background in life sciences. I myself come from life sciences, but I'm not going to talk about anything which is deep down in a specific project. The point that I have chosen to discuss with you is regulations of Ayurvedic medicines. And I am convinced over last few years that the moment you say Ayurvedic medicines, a lot of things get into your visual thoughts. And I shall try to touch upon certain fundamentals there. Certainly, as I always maintain, I will try not to reiterate, not to repeat something which is available to each one of us in the books, in the open domain. So please bear with me, and I'll be very happy to answer any specific questions that you might have at the end of it. Let me see if I can share my screen safely without any, because during the online meetings, this has been one biggest challenge, I suppose. Friends, can you see the screen that I have shared?
Yes, Professor.
Ah, great. I am moving to the slideshow mode, and I hope it shall still be visible to each one of you there.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah. Let me have this very clear. The views that I will be expressing and the views that I hold are absolutely personal. I stand responsible for the statements that I make, and sure, in no manner whatsoever, this should be considered as a view of the institution where I worked for the last 20 years of time. This institution is an institution of national importance through an act of Indian government parliament. And I will not get into what we do because I think we will be getting out of the scope. But when I think about regulation, the moment we think of this, something like inspection comes into my mind, something like a surprise check comes into my mind. And I'm sure each one of you in the audience is mature enough to understand that we cannot take chances with medicines of varying quality. Certainly not. I can take a chance with a pen that I use. Okay, if it is not working well, I can possibly get a replacement. I can take a chance with the shoes that I buy. I can take a chance with the clothes that I buy, wear. But certainly when it comes to medicines, and it is very simple, medicines once taken in, there are very exceptional scenarios where you can reverse it. And therefore, this fundamental point that medicines need to have the highest level of quality, this is something which is fundamental to any country's health requirements. And without exceptions, every country, small or big, new or not so new, it has its own mechanism of regulating the way, three things I can say, the way medicines are manufactured, the way medicines are sold, and then also to an extent, the way medications are prescribed. This might give you a thought that, okay, we have something like 193 countries that I can imagine of, and you have 100.
Your slide is not moving, Professor.
No, I did not move the slide yet. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm still hanging on to the very title slide itself. That's perfectly correct. Thank you for pointing out. Yeah. So I'll take a moment there before I get into slide deck, because slide deck freezes your whole process. So those of you who believe that we have 193 different sets of regulations, I think this would be out of place. In the last 50 years of time, gradually, countries, again, developed or developing or not so developed, small or large, they are coming across to have a common set of regulation. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in doing that, because a medicine that is manufactured here in Himachal Pradesh, I operate from Punjab in Mohali, which is known for its cricket stadium. And vaccines that are made in Himachal Pradesh, last 2 years, COVID vaccination, we have been supplying. So India is known as a pharmacy of the world because we are the third largest supplier of medicines. And when I say medicines here, I'm excluding Ayurvedic medicines. I will not get into that. With that little background, ladies and gentlemen, essentially we need this discussion because we want that human subjects or human participants or patients, they need to have safe and effective drug therapies. For one, I would never take something which I believe or where I'm convinced it is unsafe, howsoever effective it could be, and vice versa. So these are the two sides of the coin, and any therapy that you come across, any therapy that you talk of, it has to be safe and it has to be effective as well. Sir, I have changed my slides and the heading says, why this discussion? Can you see that?
Yes, Professor.
Good. So thankfully, So I think the whole thing is around that safety is important, and therefore regulations come into picture. I'll try to touch down, I promise I will not be repeating anything that is into the books. But then there is something that I would underline. I want each one of you to understand what we mean by saying Ayurvedic drug. We many a times in day-to-day conversation, we believe an Ayurvedic drug and a herbal preparation are synonymous. I think at the end of next 40 minutes time, we will have clarity what is an Ayurvedic drug and what is a herbal drug. Not long back, in the last couple of years, I'm personally convinced, last couple of years, they have made us understand the value of life much more than what we valued it before 2020. I don't want to get into emotional part of that, but yes, we want to stay healthy. And these are 4 little parts that I'll be trying to touch across. Very interesting, way back in 1999, the former dean of the medical school in United Kingdom, he wrote, and this is in Lancet, he wrote that medicine earlier used to be relatively safe, which I think is fine. And in the time when he has written that in Lancet, almost 20 years plus back, he says, yes, today the medicine is effective, but it comes with the hanging danger of being unsafe. And I think I have tried to interpret this in various contexts that I operate upon. And I would want you to get into this in case you believe. I'm sure some of you would have known a Vaidya, that is a Hindi word, but it is the Hindi word for a doctor. And, or you might have seen it in one of the visuals in the movie or somewhere. But this is the entire concept of Tridosh, simply because Ayurveda, and I'll come to that discussion, what exactly Ayurveda is. Many of you would have studied in English school in Kendriya Vidyalaya and St. John's or St. Mary, something like that. I can safely assume, forgive me for that if it is not correct, I can safely assume that possibly not a point of time, young audience in this group would have come across this concept, what Ayurveda does. Ayurveda considers a human body as one unit. It doesn't talk about cardiovascular system as one, digestive system as two, musculoskeletal system as three. No. But this is what biology we have studied. I myself have studied in Kendriya Vidyalaya. I remember my biology classes, and I remember there were as many as 9 different systems in the biology class that I have studied. This is fundamental for anyone who wants to understand the Ayurveda. I know very few or possibly none of us would go to become a Ayurvedic practitioner. And even before I talk about anything else into this, we also need to know why people are unable to capitalize on Ayurveda. I know I'm going out of the title that you have read there. It's very simple to understand. The Ayurvedic literature, the Ayurvedic manuscripts, the Ayurvedic Gyan, if I can say, is written in Sanskrit language. Many of us, and many of you in the audience, you have studied Sanskrit as a language up to a certain level in the school, and then it was out of your frame. And that is perfectly okay. Now, we have 2 sets of people, and I want your attention here, ladies and gentlemen. We have 2 sets of people, one who can read and understand Sanskrit. They are the ones who are deep down into Ayurvedic practices. We have another set of people, and that is people like you and me perhaps, who may not be as good in reading and understanding Sanskrit language, And we believe in a reductionist approach. When I pick up a strip, I want to see what is the active ingredient. When I pick up a strip of tablets, I go look at the composition. I see, okay, it is paracetamol 500 milligram. And this difference, so there are two things coming up. Number one, Ayurvedic literature, Ayurvedic manuscripts are written in Sanskrit. One. Two, Ayurveda considers the whole body as one. Ayurveda does not talk about the pieces, piece by piece effort. No, there is a separate doctor for the right eye. There is a separate doctor for the left eye. Ayurveda does not even think of that. So Ayurveda considers one human life or one body as one. Now the difficulty is the people who know modern science normally are poor in understanding Sanskrit. And I move further by saying that people who know Sanskrit, many times they do not know the modern methods of science. And this is something where we have two separate poles. Each one of them believes that what they are doing is perfectly correct and it is okay for them. We have two poles, but there is no bridge. And this is something that we need to realize sooner. Across the country, there are a handful of people who have studied Ayurveda in the college and they are fairly proficient, I will say, they are equally proficient in the modern methods of science. Very few, handful of people, not more than 6 or 10 in a country of 138 crores. And this lack of a bridge is something that is a major bottleneck for progress of Ayurveda the way it has been there. I'm not moving my slides. I will still want your attention. When each one of you were younger and you had a toothache, someone in the family, mom or some elderly lady, possibly walked into the kitchen, got clove and advised you to keep clove under the teeth, and that gave you relief. I would leave it for you to figure out what is that which has come out from the kitchen and which has helped you and anyone around you to maintain a health status. Coming back to this concept of Tridosha. In English, we say Vata, but it is not Vata, it is Vata, Pitta and Kapha. I am not going for the Sanskrit version by intent, but Vata is the subtle energy part. Pitta is the energy of digestion and metabolism, and Kapha is the energy that forms the structure of the body. I will not go deeper beyond that. I will not talk about other forms, but I think it is essential for younger friends there to understand what is this practice about. And the practitioners of Ayurveda, they are able to identify a human being as having a Vata dosh, Pitta dosh, or Kapha dosh. I would not run through my slides because I have all the time as advised. And yes, what I want you to be doing is go through that. Some of us who are largely slim, energetic, and also creative. And that is point number 2 on the screen, that if you can see that, right? We are the one who said, fine, there is a Vata dosh. Now, some of you are wondering, there are 3 elements. Do I have the 3 elements in my body? Yes. Each one of us have all the three elements in the body. The whole point is which element is dominant, and if one is dominant, the other one becomes poorer, and that is where the concept of dosh comes in. Dosh is not a state of illness. No. Dosh is to describe what the health status is. I will move further to talk about kapha. I want your attention on the last point. People who are very subtle, people who rarely get upset. Yes, this is the closest description that I can put into English language. And when I talk about pitta later, yes, people who have pitta, they are largely having a muscular build. They are good at athletics, and many of them also end up as strong leaders because they are goal oriented, they are competitive in nature, and they are highly motivated people. Some of you might be wondering, what is this Vata, Pitta, and Kapha? I think even before I talk about what is an Ayurvedic drug or what it is, how it moves further, I want you to recall, I want you to next time look at it a little more closely. How does an Ayurvedic practitioner operate? An Ayurvedic practitioner typically will not write n number of diagnostic tests, get a CT scan done, get an X-ray done, get a this done, get a this done. No. The Ayurvedic practitioner would rather depend upon finding out how is your pulse behaving, and I'm sure each one of you can feel your pulse. But the very method, the very form, the very manner in which the pulse is felt, that itself is an indication what is going on into the body. And it might appear as a story, it might appear incredible, but I remember reading that in the days when we had Maharajas and we had monarchy, Ayurvedic practitioners and our culture, somewhere there is a distinction between, so strangers are not allowed to walk into areas where women live. And it might sound incredible because it sounds incredible to me as well. When a lady was not feeling well, an Ayurvedic practitioner, Rajvaidya, if you can figure it out, Rajvaidya comes into picture, and Rajvaidya does not have access. Rajvaidya cannot even touch a female in the royal family. So what comes over, and this is truly incredible, I have not been able to believe it. It might sound a fairy tale. What Rajvaidya gets to see is a bucket of water, if you can imagine. And this bucket of water is the water that is contained, that is collected after the lady has taken a bath. That's it. Compared to the technologies available today, compared to the diagnostics available today, this will sound like living in the Stone Age. But I'm leaving it for your further inquisitiveness to be filled up, to find out how in Ayurveda diagnosis is made. Anyway, so I think with this background on Tridosh, I can move further, and I want your attention, friends. The subjects which are taught in Ayurveda, and when you look at this, the names could be different, but they are the same subjects which are taught in a school where modern medicine is taught. The very first thing I have put it in red, and that is Sanskrit language. There are as many as 16 different subjects taught, and I hope you can see my slide. The heading is subjects in Ayurveda. Yes, I would want your attention on point number 5 on the left side of the screen, which says Rachana. It is nothing, it is anatomy. Number 4, which is Kriya. It is nothing but it is physiology. I want also your attention on point number 13 and 14, Shalya Shalakya, which is nothing but surgery. And I will move with the last point on point number 15, which says Istri Rog. We now call it obstetrics and gynecology. Prasuti Tantra, the science of delivery of a baby. Now, these are the subjects which a modern medicine student also studies. And I think the only difference in these 16 different subjects and a modern science medicine student is the language. Some of you, if you come from the southern part of the country, I'm sure you are aware that Kerala is known for its expertise, certain sections in Panchakarma. I will not go there, but these are the subjects typically a student in Bachelor of Ayurvedic course will study. I said I'll talk about what exactly is an Ayurvedic drug. Our belief that if it is Ayurvedic, if it is herbal, it is safe. I think I need to be very clear and I need to break that myth. Our belief that if it is herbal is safe, it is certainly not correct. And one example that I have been quoting all my life, 32 years of work life, is a drug called morphine. You all know morphine is a plant derived product, and morphine is one of the most unsafe drugs and even a very useful drug. It is the most potent analgesic that is known, but I would also want you to know that it has as many as 13 different side effects. Why it is kept under lock and key, why it is regulated, why it is not available to you and me across the counter in a pharmacy or in a chemist shop is the simple fact that an overdose of morphine causes respiratory depression. And this respiratory depression could be fatal. Now, to define what is an Ayurvedic drug, I would want your attention on something which is authoritative text, the last 2 words on this slide set, and I hope you had the opportunity to read. Many times people ask me, are we having different set of rules for Ayurvedic drugs? Yes, there is something called drugs and cosmetics, and I guess we have some people who have studied pharmaceuticals in their bachelor's courses. Yes, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act way back in 1940, and the rules which were enacted 5 years later, they continue to govern practically everything that happens. Establishment of a retail pharmacy, approval for a new vaccine, rejection of an existing drug, everything is contained therein. I would want you to know that there are certain authoritative texts, and if there is a medicine manufactured according to a protocol given in one of those authoritative texts, then it is called a classical drug, then it is called a Ayurvedic drug. So those of us who take a mint tea or who take some green leaves, tulsi leaves, boil it in water and have it, no, you are taking a tea with a herbal origin, but calling it that it is an Ayurvedic thing possibly will be misrepresentation. And I think, yes, the sooner we are clear about it, the better. As many as 50 books which are called classical books, standard books. Those of you who know about Ayush, Ayush, I also want your attention that the Siddha system and the Unani system largely came from the Mediterranean region of the world. I will not comment upon the Siddha system because I feel I'm still I have to get deeper into that before I can comment. The point is, we have as many as 50 books which are classical books, and if a preparation is made according to the methods described in one of the books, it qualifies to be called an Ayurvedic drug. So next time when you are onto the medical store, I'm sure if you see someone buying a bottle of an asav or an arishta, Ashoka Risht. Ashok is a tree, Ashoka Risht, or an asav. These are preparations. You need to know, and this has been our wealth, ladies and gentlemen, which has kept our fraternity, which has kept Indian population healthy over the years. I might sound to be overemphasizing Ayurveda, but the more I age, the more I become convinced of the practices in Ayurveda, and later we'll talk about that. Because the title that I had chosen was Regulation of Ayurvedic Medicines, I think it makes a little meaning for each one of us to know that what are the likely areas of clinical research in Ayurveda. And if those of you who have a background in clinical research and those of who are closer to clinical research, I would expect that each of the points, 5 points which you see here, they match very closely with what you would find in a modern medicine method. Especially point number 3, I would want your attention, is standardization and validation of the therapy. And this is nothing but this is something which is a clinical trial. So the areas of clinical research in Ayurveda are as close as they are in modern medicine. And because no drug goes out to human use before it is tested, not tested on rats and mice, but tested on human beings. And that is exactly as close to that. And this gives me the additional needed confidence so that I trust Ayurvedic preparation as good as a modern medicine preparation. The only difference, if I can flag it out, we expect rapid relief with modern medication. And yes, something that comes rapidly, many of you will agree with me, goes out, fades away equally fast. Something that develops slowly stays for a longer period of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm using certain words in Hindi, and I have tried to put that translated into English in the brackets that you see. So the evidence which is based on therapeutic leads. In Ayurveda, it is called Aptopadesha. You can call it Aptopadesha. It is okay for me, but that is Aptopadesh. And look at it. Each word is so close, you will all know. Something which you see direct, something which is the direct evidence. The principle is Pratyaksha. I hope you all know Hindi fairly well, and these are not very hard words to understand. Anuman, you make a guess. I have translated it as logical inference. This is the third principle, and the fourth principle is Upaman. Upaman is nothing but an analogy. And the last one, in fact, Upaman is used when we talk about comparative clinical trials. And the last one is Yukti. Yes, we want our medications to produce reproducible beneficial effect. isn't it? I hope it has been simple and clear, and by choice. I have not tried to put in harder terms. Again, going back to clinical research, because we are talking about regulations. In any clinical trials, the fundamentals lie that yes, we need to minimize the variation. We need to be blind with respect to what is being given to which set of human subjects or patients. And therefore, we bring in placebos, we bring in shams. How we can pick up the control group? How do we put up the test group? What are the endpoints that we are measuring? And how big sample do we want to have results which we will be convinced with? These are the same principles that are applied in modern medicine, and the very same principles are applied in Ayurvedic practices as well. So essentially what I have said is our belief that it operates on a different track possibly needs this thought, this mirage needs to be taken care of. I will take a moment to talk about the 4 phases of clinical trial, and forgive me those who are aware of this, but those who have not known of what a clinical trial, the phase 1 trial that we talk of is always conducted on healthy human volunteers. Sir, you will let me know how much time do I have. So the phase, I guess I have some time, right, on my hand?
Yes, until 12.
Oh, great. Looks good. So phase 1 trial always is performed on a set of healthy human volunteers. And mind it, that is the first time a new chemical substance is administered to human beings. And the purpose is to identify if it is safe, to identify what are the side effects which are seen in healthy human beings. And if we have that, it opens up a window. We know this is happening in healthy human beings. What will happen if it is given to a set of real patients? And that is what comes in the phase 2 trials, where the experimental drug or the test drug, if I can call it, it is given to a larger group of human beings. And these human beings are different than what were involved in phase 1 because these are actual patients. So look at the sequential growth. We had performed it in healthy people. We had obtained certain leads, and from there we escalated. We go to a first set of patients, and I can share with you this second stage is so crucial for any pharma company because the decision to move from phase 2 to phase 3 is a big decision, and it involves a lot of investment, it involves a lot of money, and there is a big risk. As simple as that. If something is working well in rats and mice, I don't have to say it will certainly work in human beings as well. So it fails. And phase 2 trials, in my thinking, in my judgment, are very crucial in the drug development process because that is the first time we get evidence if the drug is going to be actually effective in patients. Those of you who believe that India did not discover new drugs, I think I'll put up an explanation to that, though it has not been asked. But if I put an estimate of the quantum of money involved, I would simply say HUGE. It is huge. When you want to take a drug from phase 1 to phase 2, phase 3, and later. And the phase 3 trial, yes, a randomized clinical control trial. The number of patients could be as big as 5,000 or maybe 10,000. This typically could be happening across the globe. And I said, when I started, I said the regulations largely are being synchronized. So I am a pharma industry in India. I am working on a new drug, let us say. I want, when the drug gets approval, and this, once I get encouraging results which I can depend upon after the phase 3 trial, I approach the drug controller, and the drug controller has several options. The drug controller could give me a permission for marketing approval. The drug controller could ask for additional information, which I would be compelled to provide. Or in a scenario, the drug controller could simply say, no, this cannot be given a marketing approval. This whole process is not driven subjectively. This whole process is driven in a very objective manner. And I want to reiterate, we have clear-cut protocols, how it will be evaluated. So essentially saying that in a phase 3, the number of patients increase, we increase the space, and that's where I said from phase 2 to phase 3, the denominator increases, and because the denominator increases, the expenditure increases, and many pharma companies may not be willing to invest that much of money and play with that much of risk. So what is the best in my opinion? I will go back to phase 1 trial. Let us say I have a new molecule, I have a new drug. I have conducted a phase 1 trial, which costs me relatively much smaller money compared to a phase 2 or a phase 3 trial. I'll conduct a phase 1 trial. I am convinced the results indicate that this is going to be a potential treatment. The option that I have is I could sell this molecule, I could sell the technology to another company which is willing to take the risk. And no doubt, there are several molecules which were discovered in our country and which were sold to other companies outside India. And that is why we get to have a belief, we are convinced that, oh, India does not perform drug discovery. I think that is a point I would want you to know. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's sounding very boring, but actually this process is something that we need to know. Once after the phase 3 trials, the pharma company submits the documentation, submits the results to the drug controller. There are people who are experts in their domain. They look at the reports, they sit down, they deliberate, they grant a marketing approval, they seek more information, or they simply say this cannot go. There is one part that I would want you to know. Processes in every country. And if you have read something which is, I wish I could write on the blackboard. If you have read something, capital E, capital U, capital A, that seems EUA. EUA, that is Emergency Use Authorization. Look at it, what has happened in the COVID pandemic. Yes, we needed a drug, we needed a vaccine. Had we gone for the phase 2, phase 3 trials and everything, possibly the number of deaths would have been much more larger than what we have seen or what we have come to know. So there is a provision of emergency use authorization. If the available data is satisfying and if the experts believe that there is good going to be happening by making this available. So there is always a provision of emergency use authorization, that is what we call EUA. And I could have put it here into this slide set, but I haven't. So anyway, phase 4 is something where you study the long-term safety. And as per current regulations, any drug that is approved for marketing in our country the pharma company has to perform post-marketing studies and keep a track of the risks and in fact, keep a track of the safety of the drug when it goes to actual human beings. And I think again, that's a very logical thing. We had everything controlled up to phase 3. It was happening in a controlled canvas. But when it goes to phase 4, the drug is available across the counter. So that means there is absolutely no control. Anyone can take that drug. And phase 4 is called post-marketing or other names. But yes, these are the 4 phases. Why I am underlining these 4 phases, many of you would believe that Ayurvedic products should not go through these. No, it is not that. I'll come to that. In fact, this design is something again which goes with the clinical trial protocols. I'm choosing to skip it. Yes. When we talk about randomized clinical trials, true, they are the best level of evidence. And only some time back, I talked about evidence, Aptopadesha, Pratyaksha, and yes, randomized clinical trials, I would only say they measure a defined outcomes when 2 or more than 2 treatments are given. I think these 6 points, they are fundamental. I just wrote them down so that at least I can move around that. There are multiple types of clinical trial. And again, this is something that I can choose to skip because I would, 11 point. I would like to interact with you. There could be a treatment clinical trial. There could be a prevention trial. There could be a diagnostic trial. There could be a screening trial. And there could be a quality of life trial. Patients who have a chronic illness, patients who have a arthritic problem, patients who have pain in their knees, older people, you can't do much to change the disease condition. Patients who are having one form or the other form of cancer, which is in the terminal stage, the doctors are aware that there is not much that can be played around. So best that you can do, or best the doctors do, is to improve the quality of life of the person. And that is the 5th type of trial. I want your attention very specifically on these 5 councils in our own country. We have developed a tendency, we always want to compare what is happening in India. Straight, we want to compare with what is happening in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, with absolute confidence, I can say that we have a system of medicine in our country. It may not be the most advanced. We may not have the most advanced diagnostic devices, but we have a system which actually works. Those of you who want to take it for further studies, I think I can just run CCRS for research in Ayurveda and Siddha, CCRUM for research in Unani medicine, CCRS, the name indicates Siddha Council, CCRH, which speaks about homeopathy, and in the last 6 to 7 years' time, CCRYN has come, which talks about yoga. And this actually comprises to make AYUSH, Ayush. I would encourage those who wish to go deeper into this to one of the sites. There is a lot of literature available. And before I go to my next slide, I want your attention. You all would remember your toothpaste. typically has a packing which is largely red and white. You must have noted in the past 2 to 3 years time, advertisements saying, and because I watch TV, I'm bringing some information from there. क्या आपके टूथपेस्ट में नमक है? You would have seen when you go shopping, there is a product and it says whatever the name, I'm not interested in the name of the product, but it says somewhere it has a leaf and it says Ved Shakti Dwara. Maybe those who are under 20 years of age, for you it could be absolutely new. But for people like me who are, I'm at this age, I remember when I was under 10 years of age, there used to be tooth powder. And in the morning, I used to brush my teeth. And that's a personal experience I need to share with you. So I have this tooth powder on my hand, and I used to use my finger and brush my teeth. And one morning, when it is not there, someone from the kitchen would bring salt and a drop of mustard oil. Talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents. You are blessed if you have grandparents. These companies which have been saying that Ayurveda or Indian system of medicine is not effective, they are now utilizing the same principles. Kya aapke toothpaste mein namak hai? And that is just one example. Kya aapke toothpaste mein fala cheez hai? I also want your attention, and this is what you will get to know when you talk to your parents. Those of you who believe Ayurveda is a system of medicine, I think let's break that myth. Ayurveda is a system of life. Ayurveda is a system of life. 70% is about leading your life. Another 30% is only medication. Look at your grandparents, and I say you are blessed if you have grandparents. Your grandparent possibly would be leading a life where he or she gets up at a given designated time without the use of any sort of alarm or any sort of mobile, takes a bath, and I'm aware, I come from the holy city of Kashi. I'm aware there are people 12 months back to back, they take a dip in the river Ganges. They do not require, they have never used hot, warm, or any kind of water. They take a dip in the running water all the 12 months. They also practice, they don't run around buying a toothpaste. They will pick up, and I'm sure if you are traveling, sometimes I get to see on the railway stations young boys or people selling something which is a neem toothpaste. This is just an example. Look at the lives. There are, whether it is a Purnamasi, whether it is an Ekadashi, or whether it is any day, there are fasts. I do not know, but this is a practice. Some of the men, they fast on a Monday or a Thursday. Once in a week, there is a practice of fasting. Does the modern system of medicine ever recommend? It is only now they are saying, yes, intermittent fasting is beneficial. And what were we doing? Every Ekadashi, someone in the family, I remember as a child, someone in the family is fasting on a Ekadashi, and the person does not eat rice, whatever, chawal, dal, jo khate hain. What I'm trying to underline, friends, Ayurveda is a system of life. Those of you who want to look at it as a system of medicine, possibly you need to get a little deeper, and I shall be open to discuss whatever little I know. I'll move to the next one, and I think that would be a closing point. I want your attention on the last line, CCRS, Central Council for Research in Ayurveda. This agency is an established agency under the Ministry of Ayush with the Government of India. They have published, and this is just a cover page, this is available in the open domain. So guidelines for the drug development of Ayurvedic formulation. This is something which is available, and I had chosen, you can download it and you can read it just in case you are interested. And our belief that regulations, this is the first one in the series, and similarly, there are guidelines for clinical evaluation of Ayurvedic treatments, Ayurvedic interventions. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the option of opening up this book, copying content from there, speaking to you, repeating what is already available in the open domain. But I have exercised the option of not getting into this. I have touched upon the points which I believe would be beneficial or will have relevance in the long term. And in case you are interested, this is something that is freely available as a download from the website of CCRS. And I appreciate your confidence. I don't want to get into this. In essence, before closing, I would only say, in the days to come, in the years to come, and if I can make an estimate, in the next 20 years of time, the modern medicine will be there, but the use or the evolution of the Ayurvedic system of life is certainly going to increase. And when you get to my age, I am sure you will be much healthier than what your friends would be who do not adopt it. Thank you so much for your patience, and I will be very happy to answer any specific points pertaining to whatever I discussed in the last maybe 30 to 40 minutes of time. I did not keep a track. Over to the organizing team.
Thank you so much, Professor. The session is open for discussion. There is one question in the chat box, Professor. Is there any particular databases explaining the compounds and uses of plants used in Ayurveda?
That's a very logical question, interesting. I talked about 54 classical texts, and the only difficulty, sir, is that those texts are written in Sanskrit. So a person like me, I have studied Sanskrit up to high school class, I recall, but as of today, I think 40 years after that, I would not be able to decipher that. I can say we have sufficient number of Ayurvedic colleges across the country. I am also convinced, I work in Mohali, Chandigarh is close by. The people, the staff members at the Ayurvedic colleges, they are the ones who have studied Ayurveda. They are the ones who can also understand Sanskrit. I have not been able to find out any database. You can just get into that. And to the young participant, I think it might appear sometimes you would be puzzled. You look at garlic, you find this is effective in this disorder, you effective in this disorder, in this disorder. You end up saying, oh, what is this? It is effective in every disorder. And that is something that I picked up when I started working with a reputed Ayurvedic manufacturer. So there are more than sufficient number of databases. I would say there are 54 classical books. And for me to even get into that, I would rely upon one of those books to get deeper into that. I hope I have answered it sufficiently. There are more points there. What I think I can. Why we are using chemical-based medicine at large scale? Because in Ayurveda there are many medicine available at very cheap cost. Yes, I think Chavi Mishra, is that?
Yes.
Chavi Mishra, what you have put up is something very relevant. But tell me, I don't know if she has access to her mic or not. But tell me very frankly, Chavi, when you take a medicine, don't you expect a relief in the next 30 minutes of time? Don't you get impatient to get a relief?
Chavi, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Sir, please repeat question.
Chavi, if you were taking a medication, would you not expect a relief in 1 hour or 30 minutes or 2 hours of time? Fine. I'll answer for you,
No,
Chavi.
sir.
Chavi, I repeat again something that I said earlier, and that will put a close to that. The medicines that we use, you have to raise 2 points. One is about the cost. Yes, Ayurvedic medicines, they are manufactured in mass today. Ayurvedic medicines, the pharma companies that you can think of, Dabur, Chandu, and whatever, they are manufactured in mass. But Chavi Mishra, Ayurvedic practice is individualized medicine. And those of you who read personalized medicine, you have reason to understand Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So we are using modern medicine because modern medicines are reasonably cheaper. Modern medicine provide us faster relief. We are not patient enough to wait for 3 months to get a relief. That's the answer. There was one more thing. I think, where did I lose the ribbon? Just one more. I think there was one. Chavi, I hope I have answered your point. What are the approaches? Brijen Singh from IIT
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chavi. I hope I could answer your point. What are the approaches that one can follow for searching medicinal plants? Brijen Singh ji, सर आप तो काशी हिंदू विश्वविद्यालय में हैं और मैं काशी हिंदू विश्वविद्यालय का छात्र रहा हूं. नेक्स्ट टाइम आप जब निकलें, आप तलाश करें कि आयुर्वेदिक गार्डन कहां पर है. एक मेडिकल कॉलेज के पास, बीएचयू हॉस्पिटल के पास एक पूरा आयुर्वेदिक गार्डन बना हुआ है सर. और बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी इज द ओनली प्लेस where I see a faculty of modern medicine on one side of the road and faculty of Indian medicine on the other side of road. ब्रिजेन सिंह जी, आप जिस भी डिपार्टमेंट में पढ़ रहे हैं, जो भी आपका इंटरेस्ट है, अगली बार आप जाएं, आप विश्वविद्यालय को देखें. मेरा विश्वविद्यालय से बड़ा पुराना गहरा नाता रहा है. So, and there is a lot of literature that is already available. Kriti Saxena. Why Ayurvedic medicines are considered that they don't need expiry dates? Nahi beta, this is a misnomer. Ayurvedic medicines do have an expiry date. Ayurvedic medicines do have an expiry date. Kriti Saxena. Sir, all Ayurvedic medicines manufactured by trial and error method. Arey Bhagwan, nahi. Kirutika M, Shri Ramchandra Medical College. I will not agree. In fact, अच्छा हुआ कि आपने ये सवाल पूछ लिया. Many of us believe that Ayurvedic you can create a facility in your house and you can start manufacturing. No, this is illegal. This is punishable by law. Let me be clear to this participant from Shri Ramchandra Medical College. So Ayurvedic medicines, they are not manufactured by trial and error method. I will only say you can make any herbal drug by trial and error method, but you cannot make an Ayurvedic drug. For me, Ayurvedic drug definition is it should fall into one of those 54 classical textbooks. Right? I hope that I have answered that. Oh, very good. Oh, no, you don't have to say thank you. Come on. Interesting. Kriti Saxena. Drugs and Cosmetics Act. मैं एक्चुअली चाहूंगा कि आपको मैंने जो 2 लास्ट में गाइडलाइंस दी, राइट? मैं जस्ट वन Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Kriti Saxena, right?
Yes, sir.
Kriti, if you can see my screen, all that you need to do better is type the heading of this into your Google database, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you will be wiser than what I am today. I can promise that.
Thank you, sir.
I have deliberately chosen not to go into this books. I said in the beginning, I will not talk about anything which is already available to you. Right? Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful time talking, and I'm happy there have been. So yeah, Kriti Saxena, SRM, SCC. Yes, it is. It falls under Drugs and Cosmetics Act. But आपको मैं चाहूँगा कि एक बार आप इन दोनों गाइडलाइंस को डाउनलोड करके आप स्वेच्छा से जब भी हो तब आप पढ़ें. और मेरा ईमेल आईडी मैंने यहाँ पर अपना लास्ट ईमेल आईडी डाला हुआ है, अगर आपको लगता है कभी. So this is my email ID. Feel free to write a line to me on ptiwari@naipa.ac.in. We have more questions. Thank you, Mr. Brijen Singh. Thank you for that note. Sir, I think we are done. There are no more questions. It's all young people complimenting me. I don't expected that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I wish this contribution goes to further the knowledge and expertise of the team that you are leading. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm leaving the meeting now, sir, with your permission, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Dr. Vishwajan. Doctor, can you hear me? Good afternoon, doctor. Dr. Vishwajanani, can you hear me? Dr. Vishwajanani? Good afternoon, ma'am. Okay, 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 okay. Maybe some technical issue. So,
Mitchell, can you hear me?
yes, bro. Yes, doctor.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Some technical snag.
You can start the students. We will continue with our third session for the day. We have with us Dr. Vishwajanani Satigiri, Scientist H and Head, CSR Traditional Knowledge Digital Library Unit since October 2019. At CSR, she was also associated with the Planning and Performance Division and later the Research, Project Planning and Business Development Directorate. Herein, she handled matters pertaining to strategic planning, resource planning, monitoring, and providing decision and policy insights. She represented CSIR in various inter-ministerial meetings and forums. Prior to joining CSIR, she was associated with a Smart Analyst, a marketing consultancy firm, and New Drug Discovery Research, NDDR, Randboxy Laboratories Limited. She was also instrumental in processing a drug candidate to the phase 2 clinical trials for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, under the GlaxoSmithKline Ranbaxy collaboration. She holds a PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, with specialization in organic chemistry, and has held postdoctoral positions at National Taiwan University, Taipei, and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, USA. Since taking over as a head CSIR TKDL unit, she has been working towards delivering to its mandate, TKDL as a tool for defensive protection of Indian traditional knowledge, currently pertaining to the Indian systems of medicine, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Yoga, and Sava Rigpa. In addition, she has initiated steps for expanding the scope of TKDL, enlarging information content in the database. In her various teams, she has led interdisciplinary teams comprising members of diverse disciplines that include a master's, MSc, PhD, MBA, MBBS, MD, MPharm. She has 30 research publications and 22 patents applications to her credit. So with this short introduction, I invite Dr. Vishwajanani to deliver her talk. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kamashan, for this elaborate introduction. Thank you. And thanks to Professor Anil for giving me an opportunity to speak at this program, especially related to the effects of the rights. And thank you once again for the opportunity. Hear me? It's all fine, right? Am I audible?
Yes, doctor. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll turn. I'll turn off my video so that I can gain some back. There's some technical snack today.
Yes, it happens sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm sharing my presentation. Once you get to see it, you'll let me know. Can you see my slides?
It's loading.
Okay.
Yes. It's Doctor.
Okay. Yeah, I think in today's session, there have been discussions with regards to intellectual properties and related, right? So in that context, I will focus on, the key things such as IPR, patent, and ethical framework for exploring people's knowledge. And this is the context of when we are talking about new products and so in that context,
Doctor, your voice is breaking so much. Yes. Some network issues.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, Doctor. Now better. Yes.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I think there's some problem today. My apologies. So anyways, as I was telling, any R&D that we do, we would like to protect our inventions. And when we are talking about protecting our inventions, typically what comes to our mind is intellectual property rights. And in the context of the intellectual property rights, by being a scientist or researcher, we like to protect our inventions. Think that we are not alone in this world. There are innovators around us. So, innovators, and among them, what I would be specifically talking about. Mentioned, I think I'm still having a lot of issues. Let me try my desktop once again because this is also creating a little bit. Just give me a couple of minutes, please.
Sure, Doctor. Doctor is not audible.
Yeah, I'll just come. I'm just trying to join through another system. So once you let me in, I will disconnect here.
Yeah, I accept it.
Yeah, I'll just leave here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay.
Just
Yeah, Amachan, you can see my slides, right?
yes, doctor. Can you see?
Okay, right. Yeah, I'm so sorry for all these technical snags. My apologies, please.
It's okay, doctor. It happens.
Yes, so continuing with what I was saying, when we are talking about doing research and protecting the inventions that we have made, typically what comes to mind is intellectual property rights. So when we talk about intellectual property rights, innovations and things like that, we need to understand we are not alone in this world. There are other categories of innovators around us. So my talk would largely be based on innovators whose inventions and their livelihoods are based on traditional knowledge or grassroots innovations. So in this context, the outline of my presentation would be on general introduction to what invention is, innovation is, and typically and specifically targeting the informal sector. Then when we are talking of this particular informal sector, especially those related to traditional knowledge and as well as grassroots innovation, what kind of protections of their innovations are available, and why do we need an ethical framework? What is the need when we are talking of commercial interest? Where does ethics come in place? And that is what the presentation would all be about. So moving on to my very first slide on the topic. So here, typically when we are defining invention and innovation, invention is something that we are creating that did not exist before, or it is a new solution to an existing problem. Typically, when we are again talking about invention, it is a result of human creativity and curiosity. What is innovation? It is a process of bringing the invention to the market, and you need to plan for the market reach of such invention. Although loosely we speak about invention and innovation interchangeably, we say that we are an innovator. We forget to very often to think about the commercial interest of the invention. And by definition, innovation is invention and commercialization. So when we are talking about invention, as it is linked to commercialization, we would always want to have monopoly or immense gain from whatever we have innovated. And that typically, we aspire to have, at least reasonable gains from such commercialization. There must be legal tools when we want to exercise such commercial interest. And what is available is the intellectual property rights. Intellectual property, as per definition, is creation of the mind, such as inventions. It could be literary works, it could be artistic works, it could be designs, symbols, names, images, many things which are used for a commercial purpose. And when we are talking of intellectual property rights, it is the assignment of legal rights by way of patents, copyrights, trademarks, etc., to those innovators who can exercise monopoly for using that item for a specified period of time. When we are talking of intellectual property rights, it is associated with a commercial interest. They are also called the industrial properties. And some of the frameworks that are available are patents, industrial designs, trademarks, trade secrets, integrated circuits, typically in the semiconductor industry, geographical indications, plant varieties. When you look at the ones that I have marked in gray, it is about the time period by which the legal rights are given to the inventors. When we talk of patents, it is for a period of 20 years. Industrial designs is for a period of 10 years, and so on. The other part, when we are talking of invention, as I mentioned, intellectual property, it could be literary works, it could be novels, it could be plays, it could be films, it could be music, it could be art, performing arts, and many more. They all come under they can be protected through copyrights. Through a copyright, the protection is for the lifetime of the author plus 60 years. And these, as I mentioned, are legal rights. So one needs to be careful when we are talking of intellectual property and intellectual property rights. These all have a legal connotation. And in this context, we need to be honest to its fullest, because such legal validity will remain only when everything that we have given is true. And why are we talking about informal sector here? Even India being, largely an agrarian society, okay, we largely depend upon agriculture. And when we are talking of agriculture, we are, including not only the farmers, we also include the laborers, we include the artisans, we include people who are associated with animal husbandry and many more. Okay. When we are talking about, the small industries, especially the MSMEs, we are talking about, the laborers in brick kilns, construction, beedi making, agarbatti making, and many more. From a services point, we talk about, people who are associated with transports, small shops, domestic servants, and many more. But when we are talking of the creativity of the mind, it can come from anybody. It is not restricted to only those people who have it all. So it is not, we are the privileged people because we've been educated. When we are talking of technologies, the artisans, and especially those associated with the artwork and many other things, the creativity goes to a much larger extent. So how do we protect such innovative work from such people? How, and especially when we are talking of the informal sector, whatever they do, it's largely also linked to their livelihoods. So when we are talking about protecting their intellectual property, we are talking about protection of their livelihoods as well. So in this context, when we are talking about, even the local traditions, it could be health traditions, agriculture, and many more, and India is home to such large local traditions, the protection needs are different. When we are talking of grassroots and innovation, I guess you have already been, familiar with these terms. Grassroots are those inventions, that are made by the common people. They may not have any formal degree, but these innovations are driven by unmet social needs. One of the examples that I have put here on my slide is about a person called Raju Murappa from Telangana. What he had done is that through an innovative method, he was able to cut electricity bill of about 400 villages by 30%. You can imagine the impact that it would have made towards the cost saving and as well as the livelihoods of those people. So this is an example of grassroots innovation. The other two categories of grassroots innovations are innovations for grassroots, where innovations are made by any organization or individual, which would be for the benefit of the communities who are at the grassroots. For innovations at grassroots, it is those innovations that are made at the grassroots level, and it can be jointly by the individuals and communities involved, and along with the NGOs or the formal sector. So while all these are grassroots innovations, okay, it is typically driven by the unmet need of that particular community or society of that particular region, and it can be varied. As I had mentioned, one is an innovation by which the electricity bills were brought down by at least 30%. There could be others like machinery for cotton stripper machine for Pochampalli sarees, food processing machines. It could be herbal formulation made through local health traditions, many more. These are all examples of grassroots and innovations. And as one can visualize from this slide, these are all associated with people whose livelihoods are linked to these innovations. So here, when we are talking of protection, especially those innovations that are related to traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions. Traditional cultural expressions is a subset of traditional knowledge, and it includes all these literary work, performing arts, and even artisans who are involved in, say, blacksmith, a goldsmith. These all come under the cultural expressions, and as well as the grassroots innovations. There are two ways by which you can protect the interests of such innovations or innovators, and one is called the defensive protection, The other one is, of course, the positive protection. When we are talking of defensive protection, what does it indicate? It is that protection which will enable no other third party to gain legitimate rights over that matter which has been a part of those communities or even nations. So you are defending this innovation in such a way that it cannot be monopolized or claimed legally by any third party for commercial interest. But however, as I had mentioned, this kind of innovation that is related to traditional knowledge or grassroots also need positive protection because it is linked to their livelihoods. So in this context, what we also look for is a positive protection wherein it empowers the holders, the knowledge holders, to protect as well as promote their traditional knowledge so that it becomes a means of their livelihoods, continued means of their livelihoods. So, and why is it necessary, for, especially for India today? Because if you look at, such innovations, they come from, the less privileged society community members. And some of the traditional knowledge that we are also looking at is, currently being associated with only the aged members of such communities, because the youngsters have long given up such activities in the interest of having better livelihoods. However, this knowledge is extremely important. The innovations made by these innovators are extremely important. And in today's context, other than very few countries like Peru, Ghana, and all that, there is no legal system in place to protect, that is to provide a positive protection to the innovation made by such communities or knowledge holders. So quickly moving over about, those legal tools that I talked about, okay, from a traditional knowledge perspective, what is it that holds in store when we are talking of IPR rights? When we are talking of patents, as most of you who have joined today must be made aware of, patent is a very, very important IPR tool. But however, to get a patent is not easy because it has to fulfill certain criteria under the Act, okay, because it is a legal tool, right? It needs to fulfill certain of the requirements. And for a patent, an invention that you would like to be patented needs to meet novelty criteria. It needs to meet the criteria of inventorship, and it also needs to meet the criteria of applicability and industrial applicability or utility. Further, as per the Indian Act, the Patents Act 1970, the invention should not fall under certain sections such as 3, 4, and 5, which I'll come to a little later. And once these criteria are met, your patent will be granted. So to understand that, let us go and look at the definitions of what invention means and what inventorship means. Invention means a new product or process involving an inventive step and capable of industrial application. So when we are talking of novelty, it is pretty clear because anything that is not known before is novel. Okay. So here, when you are talking of something new, one can understand it is easy to prove because you can say this did not exist before. But however, that is not sufficient for you to get a patent grant. Your invention should also meet the criteria of inventive step. So what does inventive step entail? It is a feature that the invention involves a technical advance as compared to the existing knowledge, and it may also have economic significance and or both, okay, and it makes the invention not obvious to a person skilled in the art. I'd like to place emphasis on that particular part of the sentence which says the invention should not be obvious to a person skilled in the art. So that is the definition under the inventive step. So what is the significance when I said it should not be obvious to a person skilled in the art? Let me take the example of, the eye systems of medicine under the Indian systems, traditional systems of medicine of India. You have Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, Sovarika, and many more, even folk medicines. Okay. They're typically, several herbs. Sometimes it is a single herb that is used. Sometimes it is a polyherbal formulation that is used. They're all used for a particular disorder or indication. And say, for example, you are talking of, haldi, okay, that is turmeric, and you are talking of, say, ashwagandha, and maybe one another herb. Maybe let's take ginger. This is only a very crazy example. It may not have any relevance in actual terms. I'm just kind of giving you an example of what could constitute an inventorship. See, for all these three herbs, okay, it is known to have immunoboosting effect. Okay. And individually, all these three herbs are known as per the classical text that they have immunoboosting effect. And what you're looking to create an invention is combining all these three. So you have combined haldi, you have combined ashwagandha, and you have combined even ginger together to make a new formulation. And if you are saying this is also good for immunoboosting, okay, it is a good immunobooster. So would your invention qualify under the inventorship? The typical answer, I would say, as a person skilled in the art, say you are an Ayush researcher, I am also an Ayush researcher, we are both skilled in the art, I would say this does not meet the requirements under the inventorship because it is known three of these individual components are known to have that effect. So when I combine that, it is but obvious to me to say that, the combination will also have a good effect in terms of, the immunoboosting activity. So now, how do I get a patent on such invention? Because I have made a formulation, okay, and I think it is very novel. So in that case, say you have a 5-fold activity or say 10-fold activity, and to a person who's skilled in the art, this is a very obvious invention. But by combining these three in very specific proportions, that is not easy for somebody to conceive, and you have developed that, and it gives you a 50-fold or a 100-fold activity, then your invention qualifies for what is called inventorship. So necessarily, an invention should meet novelty, inventorship, and as I mentioned, the applicability. In the example that I cited, I talked about the immunoboosting activity of that particular herbal formulation. So these three criteria needs to necessarily qualify for your invention to be granted a patent. So once a patent is granted, now you are the owner of that, that invention and intervention, and you can now go to the market as a sole person assignee, and then you can play monopoly in the market. But when we are talking of innovations that come based on traditional knowledge and say even the grassroots innovations, how do the IPR rights figure? Okay. And here under the Section 3 of the Patents Act, there is a specific chapter called Inventions that are not patentable. The Section 3 is focused on that, and I will not go through all the details, but two main things that would be of interest to the participants who have joined here today. One is the Section 3P. When we are talking of an invention which is in effect a traditional knowledge or an aggregation or duplication of known properties of traditionally known component or components, it cannot be patented. So I will go back to the example that I had given you, saying that, I had individually looked at turmeric, I have individually looked at ashwagandha, and I have individually looked at ginger. Okay, these are all components, based on traditional knowledge. And what I have done, I have aggregated it. Okay, and I'm saying this is, by aggregating it, it is given for the same property. So these are all traditionally known. So under Section 3P of the Indian Patent Act, even if it is a new formulation with about 100% efficacy multiple times, you will not be granted a patent as per the Indian Act. However, in other countries, this is acceptable because it is not, it meets a criteria of inventorship. The other very important aspect of our Indian Patents Act is that the Section 3D, because there have been cases, especially from the new drug, that is the NCE, where patents are extended. It is called Evergreening of Patents, So the patents are, as I mentioned, a patent grants you a 20-year period of protection. Okay, after 20 years, anybody can use that particular invention and commercialize it based on their own the method processes that they follow, and that is allowed also even under the legal framework. But as for Section 3D, we have been able to protect the interest of India by saying a mere discovery of a new form of a known substance, okay, or the enhancement of the known efficacy of the substance by mere discovery of a new property or new use of a known substance, these all cannot be patented. So if in case I'm talking of turmeric, and I know it has a good immune boosting effect, and I say now, wherever you have an autoimmune disorder, and it by helping gain immunity, you are able to alleviate the disease. If you say for that new disease, turmeric can be used, and you want to file a patent application, this is not allowed under the Indian Patents Act. So these are things that you need to keep in mind when we are talking about patents, IPR rights, and traditional knowledge-based innovations. However, a little further down, when we are talking of grassroots innovations, there is a slight difference. Some of the grassroots innovations are not exactly traditional knowledge. It might be improvisation based on the traditional knowledge. So depending upon the level of improvisations that has been incorporated in such innovations, there might be ways by which you can protect the interest and the rights of the people, and IPR rights do allow you to file suitable IPR applications for suitable IPR rights, and some of the things are what I would be talking about now. One is about the industrial designs. Industrial designs is again another form of the IPR tool, and where it is only covering features such as shape, configuration, pattern, ornament, or color, lines. It is more of a two-dimensional or a three-dimensional form of any product, which can be either manual, mechanical, or chemical, or combined. Okay, and it is about a design finally. Okay, it provides rights for the particular inventor applicant for about 10 years, and it can be renewed for any additional 5 years. However, for patents, you cannot renew your patent. It is for a fixed period of 20 years. Like in patents, the rights can be sold or licensed to any other enterprise. And some of the examples I have listed down here, which are grassroots innovations, for which the National Innovation Foundation has applied and has been granted as well. Some of them can be anything like a writing pad. It could be the refrigerator design. It could be a plate to contain holders. So it is all the 2 or 3-dimensional aspect of that particular product that can be protected through the industrial designs. So when this is not exactly a way of positive protection, but to a certain extent, it provides for the knowledge holders to protect their interest at least to a certain period of time. So it cannot be copied, and their livelihoods are still maintained. One another aspect of protecting our traditional knowledge is through geographical indications. Geographical indications are those goods which are manufactured or made, or it has an origin, and it has characteristics which are essentially attributable to its geographical location. So here it need not be only bioresource based, it can be anything. So for example, the Darjeeling tea, the Thanjavur painting. So in every of the examples that I have listed on this slide, you can see the geographical location is mentioned. For the orange, it is Nagpur. For the Mallige, that is the jasmine flower, it is Udupi. For the tea, it is Darjeeling. So every product that is there has been linked to its geographical location, and it is, the particular good is registered for such characteristics which is attributable only to that particular geographical location. So in that context, geographical indications as IPR tool cannot be assigned or licensed to anybody, unlike the industrial design or the patents. The only thing that you can gain by having a geographical indication is about branding, because you are meeting the specifications, of that particular product as has been registered under the indication. So, and these are characteristics, as I had mentioned, which can be linked to that particular geographical location. So, this is another way of protecting your products through as an IPR tool, especially for those, informal sectors. The other way of protecting the interest of the knowledge holders coming from the less privileged society or community is about the new varieties of plants and their protection. So under the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act, one can protect the new varieties of plants. It is registered, and the protection can vary anywhere between 15 to 18 years. It is an effective system for the protection of plant varieties. It also provides, these are rights given to farmers and plant breeders. It helps the growth of the seed industry, and the farmers can provide high quality seeds and planting materials at a cost for these improved varieties. So their livelihoods are also taken care of. These are all whatever I have mentioned so far, or all intellectual property rights. One another very important aspect of protection of biological resources and its associated knowledge is the Biological Diversity Act. So this act gives effect to the mandate under the Convention of Biodiversity, that is CBD, and to some extent also on the plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. What the BDA does is that it provides norms for accessing biological resources and its associated traditional knowledge. So for every foreign citizen or companies or organizations, including individuals, the authority that is enacting the Biological Diversity Act, that is the National Biodiversity Authority, needs to give you prior approval for that particular access or use of the traditional knowledge concerned. For Indian citizens, companies, and associations, and individuals and organizations, you need to inform the State Biodiversity Board, which is the body under the National Biodiversity Board, about the access and use of the biological resources and traditional knowledge. So how is this all relevant to the researchers who are gathered here today? This is to bring to your attention. But when you do research, okay, and the results of that research using the biological resources under the Act, you cannot transfer that to any third party without the approval of the NBA. Also, when you are applying for intellectual property rights based on bioresources, you need to take the approval of NBA for filing your intellectual property rights, and there is a form that has been prescribed for the purpose. You will have to access that under on the website of the National Biodiversity Authority. There are several forms, but I bring to your attention this particular thing from an IPR perspective. Now, I also mentioned that, besides biological resources, the traditional knowledge is also protected under the Biological Diversity Act. How is that? It is through the People's Biodiversity Register. What is People's Biodiversity Register? It is a document, a legal document that is made for collecting information on the local bioresources and as well as its associated use. So what happens when under the National Biodiversity Authority is that, as I mentioned, there is the State Biodiversity Boards under the National Biodiversity Authority. Under the State Biodiversity Board, you have structures called the Biodiversity Management Councils, the BMCs. These work at the panchayat or village levels, and these are the bodies that go about collecting information. The two key aspects of the BMCs when they collect information related to bioresources and its associated knowledge is emphasis on prior informed consent and access benefit sharing mechanism. It could be either access to the bioresources or its use. Either ways, you need to have, because the Act itself stipulates norms for access, you need to ensure that there is prior informed consent and access benefit sharing mechanism that you have agreed to. So in this context of, the prior informed consent and access benefit sharing mechanism, I will now move on to talk about the ethical framework. As I had already mentioned, when we are talking about innovations from the less privileged society, especially from those innovations that are linked to people's livelihood, any gain of a third party on those rights would be that, the livelihoods of those people who have been associated with it for ages together is now lost. So this is like bringing down their livelihoods completely. So in this context, ethics becomes very important, because whatever we do with such innovations, we need to ensure that their knowledge is protected, the people's rights are protected. So here I would like to draw your attention to what happened to India several years ago, and this is typically termed under what is called misappropriation. So I did mention to you just a while ago, when we are talking about innovations from based on traditional knowledge or from communities that have been holding this knowledge for several generations, or even the grassroots, they're all linked to livelihoods. Okay, and when somebody gains IPR rights, these are legal rights. Okay, it gives you commercial rights, and you can play monopoly with such interventions. If anybody has to use that invention, they have to come to you to seek permission. You may or may not grant them permission. You may sometimes sell the rights to anybody, or you may license it out to multiple partners just to have a commercial gain from that particular intervention. But when you are actually taking away somebody's right, it is what is called misappropriation. You are seeking exclusive IP ownership over that knowledge which is not yours, okay, for profit. So this amounts to misappropriation of somebody else's rights and knowledge. When bioresources are used and it is used illegally, it is called biopiracy. So under these two contexts, okay, India way back in mid-90s had faced a very difficult situation. There have been patents that have been filed on turmeric, basmati, neem, and many more. I'll draw your attention to three classical examples, where one of the patent was filed on turmeric for wound healing by a US university in Mississippi. It was filed in 1993. It was granted in 1995 by the USPTO. So as I had mentioned, you would understand, by granting of a patent on turmeric for wound healing, it gives monopoly to that assignee or the inventors to have monopoly with turmeric for wound healing. That means you and I, if we have to use turmeric for wound healing, we'll have to go and seek permission of those people to use that intervention for whatever purpose it has been patented. So India woke up with a shock, because this has been what we have been practicing since ages. In fact, it's a regular practice even at our homes, be it the kitchen or at home. So if you cut your finger, immediately, your grandmother or your mother would put a pinch of turmeric on your wound. So how can a knowledge which is already known, how does it fit the criteria of a patent grant? So there were a lot of efforts that were taken up by the country, by all the experts from across the country, that included CSIR, and the patent was finally revoked. That is, all the claims were cancelled in the year 1998. Similar was the case with basmati rice. There was a company called Rice Tech in the US. They filed a patent in 94. The patent was also granted in 97, and it took several years before, and efforts from the country, before the patent could be amended. There were about 20 claims, out of which 17 were cancelled, only 3 were allowed. And it was not until 2002 that this action could come from the EPO. In case of the fungicidal formulation of neem, the patent was filed in 1991, and it was granted in 94. but it took almost close to 13 to 14 years for us to fight on this particular patent and say that, this is already known in our traditional knowledge. There's nothing novel about it. There's nothing inventive about it. And then the patent was revoked only in the year 2005. So it all points to the fact that, when we are talking about our traditional knowledge and something which is already known, how did this figure under the patent requirements of those three main criteria that I mentioned: novelty, inventor step, and utility? So here comes the importance of what is called prior art. Prior art is something which is information or evidence that the particular invention is already known. So as a patent examiner, when I sit in the patent office, what do I look into? I get an application, I look at, what is being claimed, what is the invention that is being claimed, and then I go about looking for information if this particular invention is already known or not. So as a patent examiner, I'm given a set of documents called the PCT minimum documentation. And these are both patent literature as well as non-patent literature, such as journals and other things. And I look through all this information and then say whether that particular invention is already known or not. If it is already known, I raise an observation and inform the inventor saying that, the applicant saying that this is already known. So now you clarify how can your invention be called novel or inventive step. Sometimes I take a decision because it is just so clear. I say that, your patent application is not worth being looked further. And, the patent, we do not go to the level of patent granting. However, when we are talking of traditional knowledge, especially from India, much of our traditional knowledge, even a part of it which is in form of, codified text, these are all not part of the PCT minimum documentation. Not only that, the complexity in terms of the languages and the form in which the traditional knowledge is captured is not amenable for a patent examiner to understand the contents of it. And therefore, our traditional knowledge by way of prior art is not available to the patent examiners, especially in other countries, even in India, for example. So they go about the grant process. So when we understood that it took a lot of efforts, time and money to, get the patents amended and revoked, what the country, the government of India decided is, let's put all our traditional knowledge information together in a form that can be understandable to the patent examiners at the patent office. So that led to the birth of the traditional knowledge digital library that I'm heading today. And what we do in TKDL, that is a short form of Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, is that we compile information from our Indian traditional knowledge. To begin with, we started off with the Indian systems of medicine, because the pharmaceuticals and the cosmetics industry are ones which rapidly file patent applications for commercial interest. So we wanted to thwart those efforts from other people to file IPR rights on what we already know under our traditional knowledge. So the formulations from the Indian systems of medicine, as I mentioned, Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Yoga, and Sovarika, yoga from a health wellness perspective as well. They are all transcribed from different Indian languages into English, French, German, Japanese, and Spanish. All this work is done through a codified structure. We call it TKRC, that is Traditional Knowledge Resource Classification Codes. And these codes draw concordance with the international patent classification codes for the ease of the patent examiners to do the searches. Once the evidences are made available from the TKD library to the patent examiners, patent applications are then looked in the context of the applications for a grant perspective. As per the Government of India approvals, we provide access of this TKDL only to patent offices. And we also file what is called pre-grant oppositions and third-party observations. These are tools, frameworks that are available at major patent offices across the world. And this is not restricted to only TKDL. Any person can file a third-party observation or a pre-grant opposition once a patent application is published on their site. So say, for example, I file a patent application So let me take the example of ashwagandha, okay, for immunoboosting activity. And you had noticed that, I have filed an application based on whatever is published on the site, the patent office site. You can identify evidences, published evidences, and then file your opposition to that particular patent office. And the patent examiner would look at it and then take a decision on the patent grant. Like that, we continuously do that with regards to Indian traditional knowledge, along with whatever is happening with the patent offices that we have signed an access agreement with. And this effort has led to patent amendment, revokement, withdrawal, and abandonment. Close to about 265 such outcomes have been achieved by the TKDL since 2009. So what we have talked so far is that we are not allowing anybody to file a patent application. So this is a defensive form of protection of traditional knowledge. But as I have mentioned, what is also important is how to positively protect the interests of the people who are associated with traditional knowledge and grassroots innovations. A couple of examples that I did mention is about the industrial designs and the geographical indications, being part of the PBR, that is the People's Biodiversity Register, and so on. However, there are a lot of concerns when we are talking about the protection of traditional knowledge and cultural expressions. By definition itself, even WIPO has not been able to come up with a defined definition of traditional knowledge. There's still a lot of discussions going on across the world, because every person with a long history, every nation with a long history has its own way in which it looks at traditional knowledge. And that's the reason still a consensus has not been arrived at. But from, again, a protection perspective, the very first question comes is that if in case there is a protectable traditional knowledge, who should hold the right? There's always kind of a concern that, is it individual, or is it communities, or is it the nation? Who should hold the rights? Sometimes what happens is within communities, within village, say for example, I practice that intervention, but I do not go for protection. But however, my neighbor, who's also known to me and even their family has been since generations known to such information, has the hearsay of such traditional knowledge, and they go and they say, let me protect that knowledge, that intervention. So is that right? So yet again, there's a lot of concern about who holds the rights, who should benefit from such protection. Okay, say for example, when I go about collecting information under the PBR, the person who is not associated with that particular intervention comes and then informs me that there is this particular bioresource that is being used for this purpose. Okay, but under the Act, that is the Biological Diversity Act, which stipulates norm for access, I have accessed the information from this person. So when I'm talking of benefits, that accrues from such access to bioresources, should this person be the beneficiary? A lot of complex questions, so it is not easy. So there needs to be a lot of dialogue, lot of deliberations, and consensus needs to be arrived at when we are talking of both access, benefit, and rights to protect that particular knowledge. The other aspects are what objective should be sought to be achieved. Is it the economic rights or the moral rights? Should there be any exceptions or limitations to the rights? What forms of behavior should be considered unacceptable, illegal? Should there be a sanction or penalty against such unacceptable or illegal act? To what extent do the current IPRs afford protection? Are there gaps? What needs to be filled? How long should the protection be? What should be dealt with nationally? What should be taken to the international fora? So there are lots of questions that come here. Still, most of the questions are unresolved, but I think it is going to be a work in progress, because everything would be on a case-to-case basis. No two traditional knowledge interventions would be identical. So it has to be taken up very carefully. So as I had mentioned in my slide of haldi, neem, basmati, and all that, here we are talking of what is already kind of codified knowledge. Another complexity comes when it is oral traditional knowledge, because oral traditional knowledge is that which has not been documented so far. It has been running through communities or within families since generations. It may have improvised, we have no idea about it, but what we are very clear about is that much of this oral traditional knowledge is related to their livelihoods. So there is people's rights associated with such oral traditional knowledge. This traditional knowledge needs to be handled with due respect and sensitivity to those knowledge holders. So what forms the key ethical pillars for accessing and using that knowledge will be: one is a free prior informed consent. The second one is the acknowledgement that the contributions have been made by the knowledge holders. The third and the most important is the access benefit sharing. So coming to the first part, that is the free prior informed consent. I did mention when I talked about the PBR, that is under the Biodiversity Act of Biological Diversity Act of our country. It lays out two main aspects. One is a free informed consent, prior informed consent. The second one is the access benefit sharing. So what constitutes free and prior informed consent? It's not that, when I go about and accessing the information, I say, okay, I'm so and so, I would now like to access it, understand, what is your knowledge and what do you do with that? That's not enough, because you need to kind of explain to the knowledge holder what is your interest, why are you documenting such information, what is it that you would likely to do with that particular information, do you have any interest to share this information with a third party, and if you wish to share that information with a third party, how much of the knowledge holder would, how much of this knowledge would the knowledge holder want you to share with the third party? There's a lot of questions. There needs to be a long dialogue between you and the community holder, knowledge holder, the communities involved, about what forms the documentation process, to what extent will the knowledge holder want to share the information, and to what extent would you want to document that information and share with the third party. Next, as a researcher, what we often do is that we go about saying, local health traditions, ethnopharmacology, chemistry, botany, and all that. Okay. And what we often forget is that when we collect all this information, we do a lot of surveys, we publish everything in research articles, but we forget to acknowledge the contributions of the knowledge holders. And why is that important? Because the knowledge holders were the ones who actually gave that information to you. It didn't come out of the open. You had actually accessed this information either directly or indirectly of what constituted the people's rights. So you need to ensure that when you're accessing such information and you're publishing such information, or maybe you're gaining a patent or you want to commercialize that, acknowledge the contributions of the knowledge holders by way of authorship, inventorship, partnership, or maybe everything. Okay. This needs to be taken care of. The last but not the least is the access benefit sharing. And here, as I had mentioned, once you access the information, you make use of that, and you create a product. Now, the product you want to commercialize, maybe you want to license it out to a company. So here, because you have done it, it is not enough that you lay the terms and conditions of the access of the third party to the product or the value addition that you have done. It needs to go back to the roots, that is the knowledge holders. So as part of the terms and conditions of either your licensing or commercialization or R&D, the benefits that you accrue should also go back to the knowledge holders. And oftentimes, whenever there is a development on the knowledge that you have gained from the knowledge holders, you need to go back to those communities and individuals and update them on the status and the progress being made. So as I had mentioned, the free and prior informed consent is very critical to begin with when you are documenting such information. Accessing that information, you need to understand the interests and concerns of the people and the communities involved. You need to define the objectives of your documentation. And you should also mention what role each one will play. Like, if I'm documenting it for what action, what is my objective? Similarly, when you are talking to a knowledge holder or a community, you need to also understand from their point of view who is playing what, who knows the knowledge, who implements that. Everything needs to be properly recorded. And I'm very proud to say that when we are talking about, the intellectual property rights and the documentation, a classical example that is cited even by BIIS at TKDL, wherein we ensure that, the knowledge that we have gathered is all very well listed. Of course, in today's context, we are looking at only the codified text and not the oral traditional knowledge, but we would soon be moving into incorporating information from oral traditional knowledge as well. And of course, wherever there is a possibility of, an improvised traditional knowledge or a grassroots innovation, there needs to be enough assessment made to seek intellectual property rights, because this would be kind of giving the people associated with that some legal rights to commercialize their innovations. I did mention about the acknowledgement. There are, researchers from India also who have taken prior informed consent and have reported that in their articles. There are other people, which is on the right side of my slide, wherein there is a lengthy process that has been mentioned on the materials and methods, but nowhere can you see an acknowledgement that a prior informed consent has been taken from the knowledge holders, not their names as either authors as well. However, while we talk about the negatives of how we've been progressing and acting on oral traditional knowledge, I would also like to bring to the purview of the participants here that now way back in 1994, even before the Biological Diversity Act was enacted, the first model of access benefit sharing mechanism was put in place by Dr. Pushpangadan, and this is from the Jawaharlal Nehru Tropical Botanic Garden and Research Institute in Thiruvananthapuram. So the story goes that, Dr. Pushpangadan and along with his team had gone into the forests of Kerala along with the Kani tribes of that particular region. While these people were walking and trekking in those areas to do an ethno survey, they saw that the Kani tribe people who came along with them were always very, active, and there was no fatigue in them. They were fresh. However, the members from the scientific side who went for the survey, they're all very tired. So he noticed that, these tribes were chewing on some leaves and all that. So a discussion followed. The Kani tribe people informed them that, there's a particular plant, Trichophocus iranicus, based on which a formulation was created later on. And this is used for anti-fatigue properties. This is also called Jeevani. And this Jeevani, the process for making the Jeevani drug was transferred from the laboratory to the Ayurvedic pharmacy for commercialization. And the access benefit sharing mechanism that I had mentioned is very important here, because when JNTGPRA got into the agreement with the Ayurvedic pharmacy, 50% of the royalty and the license fee was transferred to the Kani tribe. The tribes formed a trust to help implement community welfare programs, and that is how they got benefited from this access benefit sharing mechanism. There are several cases of access benefit sharing, even by the National Biodiversity Authority. In the interest of time, let me move forward, but this slide is to indicate yes, there is a mechanism in place. Whenever you are accessing the bioresources or the knowledge associated, please ensure that the knowledge holders are also key beneficiaries. So the National Biodiversity Authority prescribes the benefit sharing component under the guidelines. Similarly, the Honeybee Network under Srishti also has a formula for sharing the benefits. And you can see that, the Srishti's formula is all inclusive. It has funds, a share for the nature, a share for the community, besides the innovator, of course. Then there is a share for Women Knowledge Promotion Fund as well. So it is something which needs to be appreciated and can be emulated by everyone who gets into such research and development activities. So with this, I would like to close my talk here. I think I kind of went a little over time as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakshmi. The session is open for discussion now. Students, if you have any clarification or doubts, you can ask. Any questions?
I think they're all hungry. They would want to go for lunch.
You will all be working in a grassroots practice, right? So if you have any doubts, you can ask.
Yeah, Rashi has asked what is integrated circuits. These are basically the electronic circuits. You know, when you are talking about even your mobile phone or your laptop and all that, you have those circuits, right? So this is a way of protecting that is through that, you know, the semiconductor is.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Rashi.
So if no questions, we like to thank you, Doctor, for joining us today and elaborating the various aspects of IPR on grassroots innovations. Thank you so much for joining us in your vision segment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm sorry for the initial mess up.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, students, that's all for the day. We'll wind up here and see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.